3:33 is the time, and we welcome all of you back into Sports Night. It's the normal three. Yours truly, Willie Donick, Darren McFarland, and we've asked Jensen Lewis, who is in town, having been here over the weekend for Vanderbilt's Super Regional Series against Louisville, to join us. And what we've gotten into is this news story that's coming out of Yahoo Sports, where Major League Baseball has pinned a series of minor league players who apparently were involved in this Miami thing, and they have backed them into a corner and now are forcing them to turn state's evidence on some major league players, or at least that's Yahoo Sports' version of all this. So here's the question I'm asking now. Let's say this thing really explodes, and you're going to have pressure probably from Congress. You know you're going to have pressure from the public, and you're going to have a collective bargaining agreement that comes back up at some point. I don't know the exact date. What happens the next time the collective bargaining agreement has to be negotiated?
Well, Jensen, don't you think that's probably the critical time here? Because it's hard. Even if you wanted to, maybe you can do some sort of stop. I hope they do some sort of stopgap to at least increase the penalties some in the meantime. But that's really the next time where the players have a chance to say, okay, let's get this right, and let's really send the message that we want changes in the game.
And again, I think it becomes that proactive approach from a Derek Jeter type within, the fraternity of guys saying, okay, listen, we've had enough. This has gone on far too long that other guys have missed out on some guaranteed dollars. But I also think from the ownership side, they're going to look at it and say, okay, we've been shelling this out. This is a defamation of the organization. What we're trying to do here, trying to retain a positive image. So I think something will be done, and I think this Biogenesis case goes a long way in spearheading that effort.
Darren, here's another thing that I find interesting in the meantime. Let's take Bartolo Colon. He's pitching for the A's last year, pitching well, gets caught, suspended for 50 games. The A's still make it to the playoffs. He certainly had something to do with that, even though he didn't pitch down the stretch. He's out for 50 games, but now he's reinstated. He's served his time. He's a free agent. Who signs him back?
A's.
The A's. So Billy Beane.
Who's winning games this year?
He's pitching great. So Billy Beane probably looks at it and says, okay, these are the rules. He rationalizes it this way. He's allowed to pitch. I get it. There's a lot of teams, as a matter of principle, that will not offer him a contract. So me being the guy that's always looking for the bargain, has to always look for the bargain, I get a cheap pitcher who is finding a way. What's he now, 7-2?
He's won 5 games in a row.
Yeah, he's pitched great.
Yeah. So
but there's something wrong with that, though.
Yeah, but you canonized Billy Beane yesterday.
With his
you nominated him to be the next pope.
With his philosophy 10 years ago, yeah. I don't canonize that move. But that's the mentality. That's one of the problems with Melky Cabrera and the penalty only being 50 games is
it's not a deterrent.
It's not a deterrent for the player, obviously. He thought it was worth the risk. He's right back making money. But it's also not a deterrent for the teams, because if I, as a matter of principle, let's just pick a team, the Padres, say, I'm not signing anybody that's tested positive. I'm not doing it. And then you turn around and say, okay, good. That's one less team I got to bid against to get this guy for cheap. He could be back on the stuff. I guess you take the risk that he doesn't fail again. But
that's why
obviously people are still doing it.
But if they were serious, it would be what? First time. Season.
But the players have the players have to agree to that, though.
First strike, you're out a year. Second strike, you're out of baseball. That's your deterrent.
Okay, Jensen, is the Miami thing going to get serious enough where the players will move close to what Darren is suggesting?
I think it's a real possibility, and here's why. Because of baseball being the only sports entity that has guaranteed contracts, you are now going against the ability for them to continue making those guaranteed dollars. And within the ranks, there's going to come a point where we're saying, okay, there's too many of these guys that have an unfair advantage that are still getting these kind of dollars. And what is going to happen, especially when these names, and there's going to be, I think, a lot of bigger names than what have already been suspected, you're going to look around and say, well, gosh, it's pretty widespread, and we need to do something about it. It would look much better from a player angle to say, listen, we're going to take care of our own, we're going to police ourselves, and this is how we're going to do it.
Wow. Conversation dried up there?
No, I think we've covered this. Can we talk about the brawl now?
You really want to get into that,
Oh,
don't you?
man, I think it's fascinating.
So,
hey, listen, I've been watching a lot of TV and listening to some baseball radio stuff today. It is the
Oh,
talk.
I know it is. Jensen, you live out in the Phoenix area, and the Diamondbacks and the Dodgers have bad blood because what?
Well,
because
last
Arizona
year-
keeps beating up on them, or what?
Well, I think that's part of it, but I think it's an isolated incident last year when Gerardo Parra got hit. And
Actually,
then,
I think that was 2011, they said.
Okay,
last
yeah,
night.
I think
That's
you're
how
right.
far it stems back.
At any rate, Gerardo Parra comes up the next time and hits an absolute moonshot and stands there and gets a sculpture made of him while he's watching it. So, as you know, in baseball circles, and especially as a pitcher, you don't ever want to get shown up like that. And it was in response to being hit when, it was kind of unwarranted. So that really threw it, into a huge chaos. And last night, I'm telling you, I've been in a couple bench clearing brawls. But that one last night was pretty serious.
That got way out of control. When you start throwing at people's heads, there was a little tension between the Pirates and the Giants last night. But to me, look, it's part of the game. But there's a right way to beam somebody, and they were doing it in the right, the leg, the back end. But last night, Dodgers DBacks, they were throwing at people's heads.
They were.
It was way out of. I mean, they threw at Greinke's head.
All right, now let's ask the question to Jensen, because this gets often asked a lot. I hear hitters all the time say, "Hey, you got to send a message, do it, but stay below the shoulders. Don't get up into my head area and start messing with my career." How easy is that to do?
It's not easy to do, and people make it seem that way. Listen, it's hard enough to throw a strike, on the outside corner when you're not worried about somebody's body being there, let alone with the adrenaline that's added into that. Also, I think if you watch that game last night and you see how the events transpired, in the second inning when Kennedy hit Puig, it got away from him. You could see his reaction. In my best estimation, in looking at him, there was no intent whatsoever. There was nothing that precluded that or said, okay, this needs to happen.
Okay, so you buy that.
I buy that.
In fact, it even looked like the catcher said something to him of,
right.
Hey, that
right. There were two strikes,
nothing there.
And it's a sixth inning of a close game, and it's a guy that I think people have
who's
figured
the
out.
Catcher
Miguel
Montero.
Yeah. Right.
I think it's a guy that people have figured out. I can't let this guy lean out over the plate. He's killing everything.
Correct.
He's crushing everything.
Correct.
But you mentioned it, Jensen. There's bad blood to start with between the two teams,
right? And
a pitcher in Ian Kennedy that does hit a lot of guys,
right? And then you have Puig, who's off to the start that he is, and you're in a tight ball game as well. And then you see Montero get hit the next inning, and looking at it was okay. You put two and two together. This is an obvious retaliation. Now you don't know what's gone on in both dugouts to bring that to light. But just watching it and having been through the situation, that's what it looked like. So there's no punches thrown or benches are cleared and everything. And then you get to Kennedy against Greinke, and I'm telling you what, if Greinke doesn't have the guile to get his shoulder up there, we're talking about, a head-on collision, and then, just all heck breaks loose.
And then Greinke, I love when he gets on first. What did he do the next play? There's a grounder. And the play's at second, obviously. What does he do? He takes out the second baseman. And it was a clean. It was clean.
But I don't think anybody would have a problem with that, though.
No. I said I didn't. It was a clean play, but it was pretty headsy of him
because of the emotions and what had just transpired. It looks a lot worse.
And then the next one, that was it. And then the coaches. This was not just player on player. This was coaches on coaches, coaches on players. It was a pretty ugly scene, but there were a lot of really, really good formers that were tangling
Mark McGuire, Matt Williams.
Yep, Mark McGuire and Matt Williams. Don Baylor.
Don Mattingly.
Don Baylor would not be somebody I would want to mess with.
No, Don Mattingly was going nuts in that. Kirk Gibson, Charles Nagy.
Gibson's another that could go a little psycho.
Yeah.
Well, those two are right at each other. I mean, you could see him just yelling at him. And Gibby's got some fire. I mean, he's, again, when he played, he was fiery when he played. And, having played for those guys last year, he's no bones about it. He's going right after you. And, I just knowing him and seeing his reaction, it didn't surprise me at all.
McGuire had the death grip on Matt Williams' shirt. I thought he was going to lift him off the ground. There was no way you were going to be able to break. You would have to break his arms to get him off of his shirt.
Solid grip.
In trying to figure out how to suspend people, and this is why I don't think you'll get an announcement today, you have to take the tape and basically say, okay, as we run the tape this time, we're just simply looking at Kirk Gibson. Let's write down all the things we see that Gibson does. Boom, 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 boom. Then your next one might be Matt Williams. This is going to take them all day and night to go through this because you got 70 players out there and coaching staff. I mean, you've got a huge pond of just...
Well, there was nobody out there to break it up. There were so many people. I mean, it went on for 10 minutes.
It was wild.
I mean, there were people getting thrown up against the gate in front of the dugout. I mean...
Because, and I think Jensen has seen this too, sometimes when you have the benches clear, quote unquote, it's just kind of a, hey, watch what you're doing. You sort of man up, but it sort of stops.
Hey,
maybe
how's
a
your
little
dog?
pushing and sort of, let's keep each other back. Let's separate.
No. In fact,
but this one, there was some stuff going on. There was some wrestling. There was some.
I tweeted out last night. Dana White announces UFC 165 will be in Los Angeles. Dodgers D-backs main event.
I remember when I got tossed in a game. In 2010, in the same situation, Beltray is standing at the plate, and we never moved at each other, but everybody got in between, and it was much less than what this one was. But I think Ian Kennedy suspended and Greinke suspended. Those are the easy ones, and the rest, they'll just go to the tape.
It's going to be interesting to see how they do it. 3:46 is the time. We'll go to our final break of the hour by telling you, you're listening to Sports Night, presented by Baptist Sports Medicine.